Here comes Grim. Hello, lovelies. Housekeeping. I've got some upcoming reviews, which will probably drop next week, but it depends how many brain juices I have left to commit to such things. I got my copy of Break, which I backed. It's a rather schizophrenic game. I'm not entirely sure who it's for, and it's presented in a very strange way, and I have thoughts. Also, with the new Dragon Age game coming along, I bought the RPG because I've noticed lately I've been getting sort of inspiration from things that I think are being done wrong to play them in a way that I think would be better. Like, I kind of want to do Star Wars, but do it right. You know, I want to do Dragon Age, but do it right. I want to unshitify a bunch of things. Resentment and anger isn't necessarily the best reason to be doing things, but it's certainly very motivational. The Necromolds review will be coming, hopefully, next week. It's a bit more difficult to review because I don't know that I have enough room on my litter-strewn desk to lay everything out and take you through it all. So it's a bit of a challenge. I'm trying to think of some other ways to do it because there isn't really anywhere else in the house I can lay things out and record them in an effective way. I should be receiving Asteroid Dice, which was something I backed recently. I backed that because I wanted giant dice, and it's hard to get cost-effective giant dice, so we'll see how that works out. But it's a game as well as giant dice, so we will see, I suppose. I've finished most of the freelancing I took on. I still need more money, but I'm just burning myself out faster trying to do all of this freelancing for other people, which is extra stressful because you've got expectations and deadlines and things like that. So I don't know. Now is a good time if you want to buy something that you've been putting off for a while. Expense and needing a break occurring at the same time is not helpful, especially coupled with health issues. The UK election is interesting, but I think most of my audience, which is North American, are kind of tied up in the US elections, even though they're actually still a fairly long way off, whereas ours resolve next week. Are you interested in another politics update video? It's been kind of interesting what's been going on here and how it compares and contrasts with things that go on in the States. Like, our big scandal has been people betting on the date that the election was going to be called using insider information, which has now spread further to people making bets about being elected at all or not, and so on. But there's a long-standing tradition of people betting against themselves to win the election so that if they lose, at least they get a little payday, and feel a bit better about it. So some of the reaction is understandable, but we're now into the field of overreaction, and it's hard to imagine anything like this causing anything like the same amount of consternation in other countries, like the US, for example, where you have a convicted felon and civilly liable rapist up for election, and that doesn't seem to make any difference, or even seems to make him more electable in some people's eyes. I've been watching Reform UK and their actions online. They're very vocal online, probably thanks to Russian botnets and so on. But they seem to be in denial about who and what they are. We have another scandal there, where an expose revealed what we already knew, in that it's packed to the gills with thick racists. I know, I was shocked too. Why anyone's backing them, I don't understand. It's like the Conservatives has been like smashing Britain with a hammer. So turning to reform is like trying to say you'll fix it by hitting it with an even bigger hammer. And I don't know that that's going to work particularly. Not that they're going to get very far, but if we did have proportional representation, which is the system that I would prefer, they would probably get a handful of seats. I mean, they're shitheads, but if people back them, they deserve representation of some kind. So, I don't know. It's shocking that anyone would back them. It's shocking that anyone would still back the Conservatives. The reason I'm not doing backflips in celebration of Labour being about to probably win a stonking majority is that their agenda is so unambitious. And it's sad that that's what it takes to be electable in this country, for one thing. It's sad because they won't have the democratic mandate to do the big things that need doing. I don't know that it's going to be enough. We have very severe problems in this country caused by 14 years of Tory rule and the times the Tories have been in charge before as well. Issues that haven't been fixed. Labour only ever seem to slow the bleeding. They never really seem to fix anything. So while it's welcome that they're likely to win and likely to win a big majority, and that some constitutional reform is on their agenda, extending the voting franchise, undoing some of the corruption that the Tories have done, reforming the House of Lords to some extent, it's not enough. And I'm worried that they're not going to be able to do what needs to be done, and if Labour disappoints people, then we have the far right waiting in the wings now. So it's concerning, very concerning. The Conservatives have kind of fumbled as well by focusing on the sort of social justice issues or anti-social justice issues, the stop woke issues. The UK has long been considered a pretty anti-trans country, but the trans issue just doesn't seem to be helping the Conservatives at all in this election. Perhaps even the opposite, given David Tennant's recent interventions. For some reason, a bunch of arch-feminists like Julie Bindel keep turning up in my timelines on social media recently, absolutely losing their minds over the trans issue and over David Tennant. At the same time, we have the Tories who are pushing this issue, and we have Labour who are trying to walk a tightrope on the issue. I wish I could make people understand that when it comes to radfems like Julie Bindel, it's not that they hate trans people, it's that they hate men, and trans women are just getting a taste of exactly how much this brand of feminism hates men, because it regards them, no matter what they do, as men. So seeing it as trans misogyny or whatever is it just misses the point. I think that these people hate men, like we've always said they hate men. It's just you're getting a taste of it, but not understanding quite what it is or how it manifests. Whereas I can kind of step back and see the broader issue. Just Stop Oil have been fucking up as well. You're an environmental protest, so you attack Stonehenge, which is like a massively important site, especially for a lot of people who are environmentally obsessed, pagans, druids, neo-pagans. A lot of environmentalists sort of hark back to the days of yore, and have a reverence for these kind of things in our landscape, and you go and spray orange gunk all over it, and that threatens to kill a whole bunch of rare lichen during the cleaning process or from the dye itself. How do you alienate one of your strongest constituencies? And I guess that's how they do it. I think they also attacked Taylor Swift's private jet. You don't want the Swifties on you, as Dave Grohl has been finding out. And then there's the US election, in which you have a choice between two senile idiots, one of whom appears less senile than he is because he gabbles a lot, but is surrounded by Christo-fascists and other deeply problematic people, and another senile idiot who can barely string a sentence together, but is at least surrounded by centrist technocrats. I honestly don't know that the debate will move the needle that much with regards to the US election, because I just don't think, no matter how bad Biden is, he's not actively corrupt and evil in the way that Trump is. So I don't think anyone's going to switch allegiance on that. A small number of undecided voters, off the basis of that debate, would probably go third party if they had any sense. But we don't live in a world with any sense. Anyway, I have digressed enough. Comments. Kalergi Plan. Bad Imagery says, I just found this video today, but I'm going to say I told you so anyway. Lemafau. Told me so about what? None of the dire things that you racist nutters talk about has come to pass in any way, shape or form, and still none of you have been able to point to a plan. So, on your bike. On the Games Within Games video, Todd Zurcher says, a Fate/Crimson Skies hybrid sounds awesome. The two that I had a lot of fun with are Battletech Mech Warrior and Barbarian Prince/Troll Babe. Don't know much about Barbarian Prince and Troll Babe. Battletech Mech Warrior we tried playing a few times. That was alright, I guess. I just felt like the role-playing world and side of it wasn't developed enough in a lot of ways. Fate and Crimson Skies working together worked really well because the skills and everything are on basically the same sort of scale, so it was relatively easy to translate from one to the other. And Fate is surprisingly good at doing dogfights and so on if you decided to just do it all in Fate anyway. So, yeah, there's examples. Bleak House says, a latest cyberpunk book on net running suggested your idea. Someone else will probably give you crap for not knowing that. My last year has been me coming up with brilliant solutions that the internet tells me have already been done. So good on you for experimenting. And the card game, Netrunner, is still going. It's just been bought by fans from its last IP holder. Board Game Geek probably has more info for anyone interested. Yeah, I think it was in Raish Bartmoss's Guide to the Net or Bumper Book of Programs or whatever it was called, but we'd already been doing it, so we were ahead of the curve on that one. I know the card game went to Fantasy Flight as part of their, is it Cyborg universe? I don't know, I wasn't interested enough to keep up with it. I'm glad to hear it still lives on, because it was always a fun game. Edward Kopp says, what about using game mechanics or pieces from a different game to create a new mechanic? I played Deadlands decades ago and they integrated playing cards and poker chips. Or how about adding a game of 3-card Monty, blackjack or even euchre as a resolution tool? Maybe euchre can be used to simulate verbal and social conflict with the taking of tricks representing winning a point in an argument. To win the social interaction, the DM determines the number of tricks necessary to win the encounter. 5 cards, 5 tricks per hand, 1 point, or 3 out of 5 tricks, 2 points for 5 tricks, play to 10 points, standard game, 4 tricks, if you take all the tricks when your opponent calls trump. I don't know that game, so I don't know how to talk about that. I've been considering things like Hanafuda cards and Mahjong tiles. I did create a somewhat Western-oriented game that used a poker mechanic where you were actually playing hands and the number of cards you could redraw and so on were dependent on your skill and so on. It was a little bit unwieldy and needed a lot more work, but I never really got the chance to finish up on that one. Deadlands has the appearance of invoking poker but doesn't really use the mechanic. Yahtzee is another one I've thought of. that could work as a game resolution mechanic, because the better the roll, according to the Yahtzee sort of scale, then the better the roll in a role-playing game. That would work reasonably well, with your skills and so on determining how many dice you could reroll, while trying to achieve the highest score. So it's partially player skill in knowing the odds and whether to go for long odds or not, and partially luck. So that's a good one. On the alleged Jewish porn conspiracy, All Out of Bubblegum says, a simple Google search reveals the truth. Al Goldstein admits it's a middle finger to Christ. He'll be disappointed to hear the second coming is real. I mean, just sometimes people come along and they prove that they're insane and not worth responding to just by what they say. Al Goldstein is an interesting person, though, which is why I picked this comment out. He published Screw. He was just basically an anti-authoritarian and a very important figure, probably as important as Larry Flint in terms of the liberalization of pornography in the United States, and the normalization of hardcore pornography. He's an interesting figure. I don't know where they got this "it's a middle finger to Christ" sort of thing. I mean, he was a very, very angry Jew, and he did have a big statue of a middle finger in the grounds of his house, but that was nothing really to do with religion. It was for pissing off his neighbours. I feel the spirit of Al Goldstein moving through me quite often. He's a very interesting figure. Go and look him up. On the Mega Dungeons video, Paul Berry says, the labyrinth from Hellraiser infamy comes to mind. So that made me think, right? So the labyrinth from Hellraiser isn't actually that interesting. It's visually arresting, sure. There's at least one creature rolling around within it, but it's only visually arresting. If you were to try and translate that into an RPG, it would be incredibly boring, because it's just a maze, right? And role-playing takes place in the imagination, and if it comes down to do you go left, right, or straight on, the corridor extends for 50 feet and then turns abruptly to the right. Above you, Leviathan growls angrily in the sky. That's going to be a really boring encounter, and that is something that can be a problem with dungeons of any size while you're moving around them. It almost feels like it might be better to abstract dungeons, so to go from mapping out each and every room to just describing the key locations, and then making rolls to move from one area to another somehow. But the problem there is maintaining the kind of mystery of not knowing what is in there. So I don't know, idle thoughts, but mazes are boring to roleplay through. They might be fun to solve, like on paper, or in a computer game to wander around one, but I find them terribly, terribly dull when it comes to actually role-playing. You can only describe a corridor so many ways before it becomes repetitive. On System Rumination, Sally Canpolat. In my opinion, mechs are easier to deal with and martial arts are hard as hell. There are various moves and styles which cannot be boiled down to a single die roll. I've always been a fan of the Murim genre and kind of feeling sad that it's very hard to implement those awesome fighting scenes. So my vague idea is that you have a hand of dice, right? And then you roll those dice to generate opportunities or scores for attack and defense, and you then effectively spend those opportunities to do certain attacks or moves, or to block incoming attacks and moves. I haven't worked out the kinks yet, but it feels like that kind of exchange of blows that goes on in a lot of martial arts movies and media and so on. You know, you fight back and forth, jockeying for position, and then someone finally gets an opportunity and lands a proper blow, you know? And that's what I would be trying to simulate and to open. Beardy Ben says, scavenging, repairing, assembling, and yes, battling mechs is exciting. Salvage Union was a waste of a variety of premises, so I'd love to see an RPG covering that territory. I'll be less keen on a card game because they're usually solvable, but that may be a better selling option for all I know. Settings that seem interesting. A mech version of that ship graveyard in Star Wars Episode 7, a Battletech style planet where there was a Gettysburg or Battle of the Bulge level conflict but the major forces were mutually annihilated, or some event made the planet or planet's surface unapproachable for centuries and people are just now arriving for salvage or are rediscovering the tech. So my idea was to have a world where there's been a massive mech-oriented conflict that has laid waste to the entire world. The war has since fizzled, both sides are bankrupt or whatever, and whatever survivors or salvagers are left on the world are trying to eke out a living by putting things together, trying to find ways to raise food and so on. So it would be a kind of settlement building, exploration, battle over resources sort of game. And it wouldn't be a card game exactly, it's just that in assembling your mech it would be put together with cards. So you'd have like a card for legs, card for each arm, card for the body, card for systems, and possibly cards for weapons if they're not integral. But rather than weapons necessarily, you might have things like wrecking balls, dozer blades, digger shovels, those sorts of things. That's what I'm thinking. A bit like MechWarrior Dark Age, I guess. On the Crit Awards fuss, Coddlesworth says, knowing a bit about some of the people involved with the organisation, such as it is, along with some other quantifiable factors, such as the Jewish creators that are participating, I don't think bigotry is the issue, but without knowing what other vectors you're talking about, I don't have anything of substance to consider, and so nothing to add. So this is where Judaism is extra confusing, as some right-wing people have been making the mistake in my comments as well. Lately, Judaism isn't just a religion, it's also an ethnicity, at least to a very large part. So you might have ethnic secular Jews who are anti-Zionism for whatever reason. Okay, what racists call one of the good ones or whatever. These other vectors I'm talking about are that the Crit Awards people have previously celebrated things like Coyote and Crow, which are explicitly racist against white people. So the anti-Zionism, when contextualized within that continuum of hate, it becomes a bit more obvious that it's a bit of a dog whistle for anti-Semitism. On the Fate Core review from way back, Sibelius says, until I was 3/4 of the way through your review, my thoughts were, okay, here's someone with a solid critique on a system. You made me think on it, and that's good. I don't agree with some of it, but hell, there are such things as personal preference, right? It's not science. The 3 dice made me suspicious, though. Here you are making a review on a system, and you only have 3 of the appropriate dice lying around. But okay, the D6 system works as well. Here comes the real but. You fully undermine your review by sharing personal grievances with the Evil Hatters. I don't have much call for Fate dice, so I don't always have them lying around. I happened to have some lying around for that review, but I aim for authenticity, so when I do review things, it's usually mostly off the cuff. Maybe I've got some bullet points, but I just hadn't taken the time to dig out more Fate dice. But I happen to have some that were around to demonstrate with. As for sharing my personal grievances with the Evil Hatters, I think it's important when you review something that you also reveal things that might affect your review. Whether you got a free copy, whether you had to pay for it, whether you know or are friends with anyone involved in the design and production of that game, whether they've pissed you off in some ways. So that way you, the viewer, is aware of any biases or anything that might compromise my review of their system, right? And I tend to do critical reviews. So it doesn't mean I hate the games, it's that I want to make people aware of the problems and issues. I'm a very old player, been playing games for a long time. I've played a huge variety of systems and read a much wider variety of systems, so I can't help but be somewhat critical. I'm hard to please, but that's what people come here for, I guess. But that's why I reveal these things when I do reviews. Lastly, on the How Do I Make People Play Gore video, where I commented on, not every game has to be for everyone. Anthony Simeone says, Amen, we live in a golden age of RPGs, with the games tailored to almost any whim, playstyle, genre and taste. One can find the game to fulfill whatever they seek. Why then do so many still persist in seeking one game to rule them all? People are lazy and don't want to learn multiple rule sets. Or they have a weird system loyalty, the same way people get brand loyalty. Or because there are certain systems that have more gravity in the market, people who want things to sell will tend to fixate upon those systems, which have the big built-in audience, the network externality. But this idea that every game needs to be for everyone, it is a toxic idea, I think. I think it's corrosive to creativity. We have all these safety rails and so on that all these people insist on and insist be in every game, and that your game cannot have difficult subjects that it covers. Maybe I want to run a game about racism. Doesn't make me a racist. Indeed, any game that I did run that incorporated racism would probably be some sort of statement against it and how stupid it is and how awful the world is. But there are plenty of interesting and fascinating stories that you can tell around bigotry and prejudice. It's spice, it's seasoning, it's important. And if you're tiptoeing through all of that to avoid upsetting anyone, then you're never going to make anything of any worth or meaningful impact worth speaking of. Maybe I want to set a game in a world where bigotry not only exists, but where it's actually justified. Like, maybe orcs really are evil. Maybe they have been created specifically for the purpose of doing evil by an evil god, and so people's prejudice and hatred towards orcs, goblins, whatever, is absolutely and perfectly justified. What if I want to run a world in which there is a different metaphysic, in which God does exist and does communicate with clarity and consistency with people on Earth, where there is a single objective, good and evil, or an historical game where people at least believe that. These are all interesting. This is part of the power of role-playing, stepping into the what-ifs, including difficult subjects. Like, fun has a lot of different definitions. Some people like roller coasters. I don't like roller coasters. Some people like haunted houses. I do like haunted houses. Some people don't like haunted houses. If you like the roller coaster, you should be allowed to go on the roller coaster, and it shouldn't be going at 5 miles an hour because there are some people that don't like roller coasters. If you go and see a horror film, you're going to see a horror film, and if everything is a U for Universal rating, it's not really for anyone. I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand, or why they can't take the onus upon themselves to modify things to the way in which they want them, and instead seek to impose their one true wayism on everyone else. But again, that's another rant. I think from the way I've been rambling on, you can tell I've been missing doing my full-length videos, but I am still very, very tired. Zang. Sup, bitches? I'm reliably informed that I'm terrible at pimping my stuff. So here I am, pimping my stuff in what's hopefully an amusing way. If you want to interact with me and follow me, you can find me on Twitter @Grimasaur and @Mort_post for official announcements.
The priest he says we're wicked, but to worship the devil's bird. But we respect the old ways and we disregard his word. For we know they rest uneasy as we slumber in the night, and we'll always leave out a little bit of meat for the bird that's black and white. One's for sorrow, two's for joy.